Isabel's family estate sprawled across green hills, surrounded by towering oaks and flowering trees that swayed in the soft, ever-present breeze. It was a world of her own, a sanctuary where she spent most days tending to the flowers, shrubs, and herbs in her garden. Her grandmother had passed down this passion to her, instilling a love for the supple magic in nurturing life from the soil. Now, she found herself most at peace when her hands were deep in the earth, coaxing new blooms to life. So, when Mr. Graham, a longtime groundskeeper, insisted on hiring a young gardener to help with the growing demands of the garden, Isabel hesitated. Her garden was more than just a collection of plants. It was her heart and soul, a place where she let her guard down, away from prying eyes. She wanted no intrusions, but Graham was firm, reminding her that the estate had become too vast for her to manage alone, especially with the summer season approaching. Early one April morning, while pruning her prized roses, Isabel heard soft footsteps behind her. She turned to find Mr. Graham with a tall, sun-kissed young man by his side. "Miss Isabel, may I introduce Luca, our new gardener?" Mr. Graham's voice was gruff but fond. Luca offered a warm smile, his brown eyes meeting hers with a gentle spark. "Good morning, Miss Isabel. I've heard a lot about your garden." Caught off guard, Isabel forced herself to smile, hiding her reluctance. "Well, I'm a bit particular about how things are done around here, but welcome." "Particular is good," he replied, the corner of his mouth quirking into a slight smile. "This is a beautiful place. I'm honored to help care for it." With a nod, she watched him as he moved over to the lavender beds, crouching down to inspect them. He had a natural ease to him, a confidence that intrigued her despite herself. His hands moved deftly, his fingers brushing delicately over the leaves as he assessed their health. She could see in his movements a deep respect for the plants, a quality she'd rarely seen in others. The next few weeks passed in a comfortable rhythm. Each morning, she would find Luca already working in the garden, usually in the herb patch or near the fountain that sparkled in the early sunlight. Isabel made a point of visiting different areas each day, secretly hoping to cross paths with him. She convinced herself it was just to make sure he wasn't disturbing her precious plants, but she knew better. One bright afternoon, she caught him kneeling by the roses, carefully deadheading each one to encourage new blooms. The sight of him, his hair ruffled, his shirt rolled up to his elbows, his strong hands moving skillfully among the petals, stirred something in her, a feeling she couldn't quite place. Her usual reserve melted a little, and she found herself approaching him. "Luca," she said, trying to keep her voice casual. "You seem to have a natural touch with roses. Not everyone does." He looked up, his face breaking into a smile that sent a warmth rushing through her. "Thank you, Miss Isabel. Roses require a lot of patience, but I think that's what makes them beautiful. You have to understand them first." She nodded, watching him as he continued working, captivated by his quiet dedication. Over the next few weeks, they struck up conversations about everything from soil types to world literature, finding common ground in their love for nature and stories. She learned that he had traveled extensively, studying plants in different parts of the world. He spoke of each flower, each landscape with a reverence that mirrored her own feelings for the garden. One day, as they admired the blooming hydrangeas together, Isabel felt a thrill as their hands accidentally brushed. She looked up to find him already watching her, his gaze intense, as if he could see straight into her soul. Her pulse quickened, but she tried to maintain her composure, clearing her throat to break the silence. "Luca," she began, unsure of what she was even going to say, "you've really brought a new life to this place." "It's easy to care for something that's already loved," he replied, his voice soft yet firm. "I can feel how much this garden means to you. Every inch of it has your touch." Their eyes met again, and for a brief, suspended moment, she felt something in her chest, a longing, a warmth she hadn't felt in years. But she quickly brushed it aside, unwilling to admit her growing attraction. She excused herself, making her way back to the house, but the image of his intense gaze lingered in her mind. Late spring gave way to summer, and the garden reached the peak of its beauty, bursting with color and life. One evening, a storm swept through the countryside, bringing with it dark clouds and heavy rain that drenched the estate. As Isabel watched from her window, she thought of Luca, wondering if he had made it back to the guest house on the edge of the property. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Luca, soaked from head to toe, his shirt plastered to his skin, showing every curve and muscle beneath. The sight took her breath away. "Luca," she exclaimed, "you're drenched. Come inside." "Thank you, Miss Isabel," he said, stepping into the warm glow of the house. "I was trying to cover the rose beds when the rain started, but I guess I underestimated the storm." She handed him a towel, her fingers lingering on his as she felt the warmth of his skin beneath the dampness. He dried himself off, and they moved to sit by the fire in the drawing room. The soft light cast a golden glow over the room, illuminating the shadows in his face, the way his hair curled when it was wet, the intensity in his eyes. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the rain pattering against the windows. Finally, Luca turned to her, his gaze gentle but searching. "Isabel, I have to say, it's been a long time since I've felt this connected to a place or a person." Her breath caught. "I feel it too," she whispered, barely recognizing her own voice. Her heart pounded in her chest as he reached for her hand, his thumb brushing gently over her knuckles, sending shivers down her spine. "Isabel," he murmured, his voice filled with both hesitation and longing. She leaned toward him, and in that moment, the world outside faded away. His lips met hers, soft at first, as if testing the waters, then deepening as their emotions took over. The kiss was slow, exploring, as if they were both savoring every second, every breath, every touch. Her fingers traced his jaw, feeling the roughness of his stubble, the warmth of his skin. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, as though he couldn't bear to let go. The rain continued to fall, but inside, they were lost in each other, wrapped in a cocoon of warmth and desire. Hours passed as they shared whispers and secrets, discovering the depths of each other's hearts. They spoke of dreams and fears, of the life they had found within the quiet beauty of the garden. In the early hours of the morning, they lay entwined by the fire, the flickering light casting shadows over their bare skin. Isabel traced patterns along Luca's shoulder, feeling a contentment she hadn't known was possible. "This feels right," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "It does," he agreed, his eyes holding hers with a promise. "I never expected to find something like this, something so real." As dawn broke, they finally rose, reluctant to leave each other's side. The garden was bathed in the soft light of morning, every leaf and petal glistening with droplets from the night's rain. They walked through it together, hand in hand, savoring the peace that had settled over them. Days turned into weeks, and Isabel and Luca continued to work side by side, their relationship blossoming like the flowers they nurtured. Their connection grew, rooted in the quiet moments they shared amid the colors and fragrances of the garden. Each day brought new laughter, new discoveries, and new reasons to fall for one another. On a balmy evening in late summer, as the sun set over the hills, Luca led her to a secluded part of the garden, where he planted her favorite flowers. The air was thick with the scent of roses, jasmine, and lavender. "Isabel," he began, taking her hands in his. "This garden, this life we've created here, it's everything I never knew I needed. You're everything I never knew I needed." Tears filled her eyes as she met his gaze. "And you, Luca, you've brought a new life to my world. You've made me see colors I'd forgotten existed." They embraced beneath the twilight sky, the garden surrounding them like a sanctuary, a living testament to the love they had cultivated together, as enduring and beautiful as the flowers they had grown side by side.